I wanted to use my senior speech to talk about something important. And right now, nothing is more important to me than the fact that we, as humans, have literally been destroying our planet's ability, the place we call home, to support living things, including us. This phenomenon is not called global warming, but climate change, since saying that our globe is experiencing just an increase in average temperature would be a huge understatement. The official definition of climate change states that it is, quote, a change in global or regional climate patterns, in particular, a change apparent in the mid to late 20th century and onwards, attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels. As complex as that sounds, climate change isn't rocket science. All climate change boils down to is the excessive carbon that we, as an industrialized society, have been spewing into the atmosphere. However, carbon, a simple organic compound that we learned about in science class, is having and will have disastrous negative consequences in the years to come. Global average temperatures and carbon output will continue to rise to almost unheard of levels. Glaciers and polar caps are melting at an unprecedented speed. Weather incidences such as super hurricanes, which are fueled by warmer oceans, once thought of as 1 in 100-year natural disasters, will become much more a part of the world's existence, as we have seen this year. Sea levels will rise by approximately 4 feet, which means that if you and your family are planning a trip to Cancun or Cozumel, look elsewhere, because by 2100, they, along with a significant piece of lower Florida and parts of New York City, will be completely underwater. Rising sea levels will also lead to massive economic strain, as many of the goods and products that we take for granted today, such as coffee, are outsourced and produced today in places which face severe risk for flooding. It sickens me that small island nations such as the Solomon Islands in the Pacific, whose cultures have lived in peace and harmony for hundreds of years, worshiping nature, and have done little to nothing to cause climate change, will be the first to pay for our gluttonous actions. Their island nations will disappear. They won't be alone. Worldwide, approximately 100 million people live within 3 feet of sea level. And the plants and animals that we, as a dominant species on this earth, are supposed to be the caretaker of, will fare even worse. Experts predict that 1/4 of Earth's species will be headed for extinction by 2050 if the warming trend continues at its current rate. However, addressing climate change is much more complex than just buying a Toyota Prius. So just what has our government as a whole, one of the world's leaders and one of the leading contributors to climate change, done to address this crisis? Well, the short answer is pretty much nothing. First, there is the complete and intentional ignorance of the issue. Our leaders have ignored the findings of credible scientists. Thanks to campaign contributions by the Koch brothers and other energy sectors, we have Republican politicians like Republican Senator James Inhofe, the chairman of the Senate Environment Committee, who in 2015 brought a snowball onto the Senate floor, saying that the fact that it had snowed in Washington, D.C., he had proof that global warming was a myth. Really? Is that the best our leaders can do? Even the EPA, which was established to enforce environmental laws and help protect Americans from environmental threats, has been under attack from the inside. Earlier this year, Donald Trump appointed Scott Pruitt as the head of the EPA. Pruitt has spent most of his life lobbying for the defunding and dissolving of the EPA itself, even going so far as suing the EPA. He's been quoted as saying that climate change is a joke, and he doesn't have time to deal with jokes. Pruitt and Trump have also declared the war on coal being over, and they are continuing to invest in a resource that is not only one of the leading causes of excessive CO2 output and is horribly inefficient, but also one that will run out in a matter of years. Pruitt has removed any mention of climate change from the EPA's website and barred scientists working at the EPA from working and reporting on climate change. Trump has also decided to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was signed on by 169 countries across the globe and is aimed at tackling the threat of climate change by cutting back on carbon output and limiting the increase of global temperatures. Trump's reasoning was because he thought that it would, quote, undermine our economy, hamstring our workers, weaken our sovereignty, and put us at a permanent disadvantage to other countries in the world, which is ironic because the only country that has not signed on to the Paris Climate Accord itself is the United States. One has to ask, so what advantage is there to living on a planet that will struggle to support life as we know it today? What Trump fails to mention is that by taking the easy route and transferring the load of climate change to our generation, we will have to spend $700 billion per year on the costs associated with climate change by the time we approach our 30s. And according to Business Insider, once a reservoir of methane previously sealed off by ice in the Arctic bursts, it'll cost the world economy $60 trillion, while at the same time speeding up the effect of climate change by nearly 30 years. When it comes to climate change, our leaders have failed each and every one of us high scorers in this room, every one of us, as well as the plants and animals that we share the globe with. But I presented these facts to you not as a means of scare tactics, as many climate change documentaries use, but as evidence of why we, everyone in this room, need to act starting today. We must never give up, even when the challenge of climate change seems impossible. SPA has given us the keys of shaping the world, and we must use those keys for ourselves, and most importantly, for future generations of humans and the plants and animals that we share the globe with. Look on this challenge not as something to fear, but as an opportunity to step up where our current leaders have failed. We can save the planet's ability to sustain life as we know it, whether it is in our daily lives, such as shutting off your lights, not idling your car, biking or walking instead of always driving, in the jobs and positions that we hold in business, in the industry and the arts, and most importantly, in the candidates and leaders that we vote for. This is not about Republicans. This is not about Democrats. This is not about conservatives. This is not about libertarians. And this is not about independents. This is about us and our future and our children's and our grandchildren's future. The world is dramatically going to change in our lifetime and is already changing. There is no turning away from that. But we can still save our planet's ability to save us and other species. But we must not shrink back and act like cowards or expect someone else to take care of the problem, because they won't. We need to start dealing with this today. Thank you.